first discussion on the show is about the budget, and who better to ask than Prem Sikka? Are you there, Prem?
Yes, good morning, Crispin, and good morning, all the comrades there.
Now, I'm not. I didn't bother watching the budget this year. I wasn't that excited about it, to be honest. It wasn't something I thought, oh, I'm really interested to find out what happens here. But I did see afterwards some of what came out of it. I'm just going to go through a couple of bits on there. The first is this is Jeremy Hunt mirrors Labour policy by axing non-dom tax rules. Chancellor overhauls system so new arrivals to the UK will pay same taxes as other residents after 4 years. So the Conservative government has adopted a Labour policy that Labour's been banging on about that for a while. I don't know. I mean, it just seems they can take another policy from Labour. And then this is Labour's response to the budget. This is Darren Jones, MP. I'm just going to play this clip.
We have to deal with the books as we inherit them from the Conservatives. And they've spent all the money. They've maxed out the country's credit card. Debt is higher than it has been since the Second World War.
I mean, Labour's adopted the Conservative line of maxing out credit cards and the magic money tree. So they're swapping each other's clothes here, and I'm getting confused. Is there any difference between the two parties that you can identify? And what do you make of the non-dom change?
Well, both parties are peddling myths. There is no such thing as a government credit card. Governments can create money at will, and we've seen that when they bailed out banks, when they handed nearly £1 trillion of quantitative easing to speculators. Governments have the capacity to create any kind of society they want by creating money, especially a country which has a premier currency like the United Kingdom has in pound sterling. And if spending of that money creates inflation, then they can claw it back from those who benefit the most from that spend. The government never did that, or never clawed any of that back from those who benefited from quantitative easing. And using the household analogy is absolutely stupid. It's economic illiteracy. Households can't create money. We can't raise money through taxes. We basically have a finite amount. I can't remember a government which said first we must have tax revenues and then we will spend them. They always spend first. That's how the welfare state was created, when we had a debt of around 260% of the GDP. We are just under 100% now, and part of that is also false, because our public debt also includes nearly £1 trillion of quantitative easing, which is the money the government owes to the Bank of England. I mean, these numbers are cooked. They're simply cooked for the reason that they have a vision of a society in which the working class is suppressed. You have a docile population. You make sure you ban protests, you ban strikes, you make the poor the poorer, and that is absolutely stupid. On the non-doms, well, I think Labour here is on a slippery slope. Labour has refused to tax the rich. They said they won't increase the capital gains tax. They won't have a wealth tax. They won't have a higher rate of income tax. So they were banking on this non-dom amount, which is not really that much that's going to raise. In 2017-19 Labour manifesto, we estimated that it would raise about possibly £1 billion. The Tories are saying about 2.6, 2.7 billion. Labour was saying about 3 billion. That's not going to solve the country's problems at all. Labour can't take on the Tory narrative that somehow our debt is too high, somehow our taxes are rising. What is happening is that the taxes on the poor are rising. As a result of Hunt's budget, more pensioners will be paying income tax than before. The poorest will be paying more tax than ever before because allowances are frozen. What Labour needs to do, and it will have to do if it is in office, it will either have to borrow more or it will have to increase taxes on the rich, because by releasing the people at the bottom from high levels of taxes that they bear now, you create possibilities of stimulating the local economy. You create the possibility of people surviving. So Labour is borrowing the Tory narrative with huge problems. It will have to pretty soon stop saying things like tax burden is too high and instead talk about redistributing the tax burden onto the rich, because without that, we're just not going to get any rejuvenation of the UK economy.
Labour's not really helping by kind of dumbing down the talk about maxing out either. I mean, that makes it even that they're making the conversation more difficult if they want to talk about raising funds and stuff, aren't they?
Well, that is absolutely right. So raises huge questions. What is the difference between Conservatives and Labour? They're basically talking the same language. The interests of big corporations and the wealthy are writ large into their policy. Well, okay, so if Labour doesn't want to increase taxes for the rich, what is it going to do? The obvious answer is that they're thinking about even deeper austerity. And indeed, Rachel Reeves said we will raise additional money by cutting public spending and cracking down on benefits. So how are you going to make 2.8 million people who are chronically ill work? It is an impossible thing to do. And also when you got 7.76 million unfilled NHS hospital appointments, you inevitably will have to invest in the National Health Service. But that is not what they're promising either. So basically, what this budget has done with the government, as it were, grabbing the leg called non-dom, which was going to raise some money, hasn't left really Labour with any economic strategy. It hasn't left it with anything to do with how it is going to fund the rejuvenation. And I think there is real danger that if after 14 years of Conservative rule, you will get a Labour government, the Labour government would fail. It would, people would be disillusioned with it within 3-6 months to say it is the same old policy, same old narrative, and people are more likely to flock to the far right because the left isn't that organized to offer home to disillusioned young people, middle classes, senior citizens, and that is a real danger. And I am sure, in my mind, the senior people in Labour would be thinking about it. But the disappointing thing is they're still spouting the same old Conservative rhetoric, and that is a disastrous thing to do.